It was gonna be me.
Everyone, thank you for being here. This is the Pease Restoration Advisory Board. I'm Ona Ferguson here with my colleague Abby Fulham from the Consensus Building Institute, helping to run tonight's meeting. So happy to see you all. We hope you got a chance to watch the part of the presentation. I will take you through the agenda in a minute. Just to name, this is a hybrid meeting. So we have right now 14 people attending virtually. And hopefully those of you participating virtually can hear us and will be able to see us for the best. Like, I think we should have decent visibility for those of you online. Abby Fulham will put her contact info in the chat. So those of you who are on virtually, if there's any tech problems that she can help with, you can contact her. And otherwise, when we're having dialogue and discussion, most of our dialogue and discussion is for members or for the technical team. And if we get RAD members in the Zoom, we'll invite you to raise your virtual hand. RAD members in the room, as a reminder, or for any of you who are new, if you want to get in the queue, I will call on you. You're also welcome to just chime in if it's kind of quietish, but you can put your placard up on end. Bonus points if you put it toward me so I can see your name, because it makes it much easier. And then if you take your card down before you've spoken, I'm going to assume you changed your mind. So keep it up, and even if I say, oh, the queue is Peter, Chris, and so that's kind of how things will work. We do have a public comment period for the end of the meeting. Dante, I didn't check this with you, but if people would like to make public comment and you're in the room, if you can go to the back, chat with Dante, he'll just take names, or you can fill out a card. If you are on virtually, you could also email Abby, so the easiest way, or I might do a show of hands partway through the meeting. And we'd like to know by 7:15 if people want to make public comment so that we can manage time accordingly. The agenda going forward is we're going to do introductions and a little more just starter committee business. And then we're going to have a half an hour for open conversation of the RAB. I know Andrea Amico, the community co-chair, has a few things she'd like to share as part of that. Then at 6:15, we'll go to the Air Force for an update on a human health risk assessment and the Department of Defense policy and information sharing topics. And they will do a presentation and we'll talk about it kind of as we go through that. We have an update on drinking water from the city of Portsmouth. Brian is here tonight. No, I saw you somewhere, Brian. You can also come to the table in lieu of Al, since he's absent. If you would like, you're welcome. Sarah here. And then we'll have public comment. And then we will wrap up at 8 o'clock. Any questions about the agenda? All right. Let's do introductions and then we'll just do a little bit more business before we go farther. So we introduced everybody in the meeting. And I'm going to we'll start in person, and hopefully the meeting owl will pick up most people for those of you online so you can kind of see who's talking. And actually for those of us in the room, to the extent you can remember to say who you are when you start talking, it makes it easier for the people attending virtually. But let's go around. First, we'll go around the table, your name and your role or affiliation, and then we'll go around the big room. Abby, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi everyone. Abby Fulham, working with the Consensus Building Institute. It's nice to be here. Let me know if you have any tech challenges.
Thank you.
I'm Sam B, and I'm a RAD member.
All right, I'm Chris King. I'm the Peace Program member and Air Force co-chair for the RAD.
Jim Kunzman, I'm a consultant. I work with Cherokee Federal, and I'm supporting the Air Force.
Kim McNamara, I'm the director of the Portsmouth Health Department.
Heidi Grandy, community member, 19.
Peter Sandin, New Hampshire DPS Project Manager, please. Mike Daly with US EPA.
Rosalie LaPresso, community Brad member.
Jack Bessie, I'm an engineer with WSP, a consultant to the Air Force.
Amy Quinton, I'm a risk assessor with WSP, consultant to the Air Force.
Haley Plan, I'm a project hydrogeologist for WSP and consultant of the Air Force.
And Mark Madsen, community RAB member.
Autumn Bricker, I'm the Deputy Mission Support Group Commander at Pease Air National Guard Base and representing the New Hampshire Air National Guard.
Ben Johnson, RAB member from Newington.
Paul Roy, RAB member from Newington.
Mike Donahue, I'm with them.
Andrea Amico, Portsmouth resident and the community co-chair of the RAB.
Thank you. We'll go around this way.
Maureen Sullivan.
Great, thank you. Feel free, if you have an affiliation that's relevant, you can mention it. And it's fine if you are just sharing your name.
Haggai Nassau, I'm with the EPA contractor CEO or task, technical advisory team.
Harvard City also is CEO.
To Dante.
Air Force Public Contractor, agents.
Brian Gadd, City of Portsmouth, been heading for Al Pratt, who had to be away tonight, but I too, I have to say, I'm glad I'm here tonight. Mona, you have just done a wonderful job. All throughout this thing, and that's a lot, and good job.
Mike Paganelli, City of Portsmouth. Tim Green, also at the City of Portsmouth.
Elizabeth McKenna, Center Shooting Doctor.
Roger Dormer, interested citizen.
Jared Sheehan, PDA.
Brandon Shaw with WSP.
Nate Logan, hydrogeologist with WSP.
Grant Austin, project manager with WSP.
Lauren Tierney, project manager with WSP.
Hank Nolsek, hydrogeologist with WSP.
Member.
Hi.
Will you come to the table?
Hi.
Yes. Great, let's do. I'm gonna just, for simplicity, I'm gonna let Val, do you want to introduce yourself? We gave you special powers. You can unmute yourself.
Yes, this is, I don't know how to do the camera. I'm on a weird device, but anyway, yes, this is Val Del Fuente. Thank you for, I'm the branch chief, Chris's supervisor, and the the occasional part-time Beck for Pease. And I'm very happy to be participating today. Thank you. I'm sorry I can't be there. I was recently injured, but I would like to attend the next one in person. Thank you.
I'm just gonna, for simplicity, read the other attendees' names. Some of whom are in this room, right? Because some of you are on the Zoom, which is fine. Andrew Hoffman, Christina Harvey, Dallas Prater, Dante, Doris Brock, Frank Getchell, Haggai Nassau, Kate Field, Catherine Sarsfield, Carrie Zach, Lee Major, Madison Dinsmore, Patrick Carroll, and Toby Bergman. Thanks everyone for that. It'll take a minute, but it's nice to know who you're talking to before you start talking to them. I want to, there's a lot of precursor to this, say we're having some staffing changes on the CBI facilitation team. And my colleague Toby Berkman is going to be taking over for me. I'm trying to focus more on more local Boston climate related work. And it's been a great pleasure to work with all of you, and I am happy to be in the background if anyone that's needed. Abby is helping just for this meeting. So Toby will actually have another colleague, RT Hall, who will start helping, but we're doing hopefully a really smooth transition. I don't think you should see much disruption. And thanks for being very sweet. We're gonna see. So you will meet Toby, and it will be great. I've worked with him for almost 10 years, and I have full faith in his ability. Logistical detail, we sent out the main meeting summary to RAB members in June. We asked for any feedback or edits a couple weeks later. We didn't hear a peep. Can we assume it is fine to consider approved and post online? Yes, thank you. That's it, I think, for those details. We're ready to open the conversation, and then I think I'm gonna have the start. So this is time for any RAB member to raise any issues, questions, concerns. We can also pick up questions you had about the presentation that you've seen so far. Kim has a question or comment. Should we go to Kim before going to you?
Should we
I
do
think you
those
have a few.
questions first and then we can go into the other updates? I think that's a good plan.
So on the presentation about site 8, it was mentioned that waste is still being sent to a hazardous waste landfill. And at one point, quite a while ago, it was waste was being incinerated, I understood, and then there was some glitch and it sort of was being combined and for a while it was no longer being incinerated. But is that something that is going to come back? Are we gonna be able to incinerate waste again? Or is there new information that maybe that's not as effective as first thought?
I can answer that one. So, excuse me, there has been some developments on that, and incineration is going to once again be an acceptable form of disposal. Of course, there's gonna be some conditions associated with that. One of them being they're gonna have to be state and or EPA certified incinerators that meet certain temperature, holding time, basically total destruction requirements. So right now we are unable to press forward with that because there is a current hold on that, pending some further analysis and, kind of like a NEPA EIS type of document that's being generated by that. And it's not being generated by our office. It's more of an umbrella OSD type of a thing. But right now I think we have a 45-day hiatus on any incineration or to even consider incineration. But once that's lifted, then we'll be able to again, reach out to certain facilities to see if they meet those criteria. And if it's deemed in, reasonable, financially beneficial, then we may switch back to that. So yes, but again, they have to meet those conditions within that policy and within that guidance that basically full destruction.
May I follow up?
Yes.
I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you. Just for the record, I think that we've expressed concern before about just not taking our PFAS and making it some other generation's or someone else's problem. So I think that's a very important component of the restoration. Thanks.
Understood. Thank you.
Have they considered any other types of destruction or just incineration?
There are other types of, under consideration. There are actually studies ongoing of other PFAS destruction methods. I believe Ben and you and I had a conversation about this offline one time, but generally speaking, there's an OSD program where they're testing a lot of these up and coming technologies under controlled conditions so that it's not gonna, they're really looking to see which one of these is the best at certain things, whether it be in soil, whether it be in really concentrated water or anything along those lines. So once that study is complete, and again, that's not a BRAC study, that's entire up. Once that's done, there will be white papers and guidance and such distributed. And then my understanding of the program is then it will be considered for site-specific operations under certain circumstances. But right now, that's there's not a whole lot of other alternatives besides landfilling or incineration at this moment. That's a bad issue.
To follow up on that, the new location in Michigan, is that a landfill right now though? The one that Jeff
Yes.
mentioned?
It's a Class C hazardous waste landfill.
Okay, and where was it going before?
It was going to Alabama, right? Yep.
Okay.
We had to get a new waste hauler because they were unresponsive and we didn't want things piling up at the site causing issues.
Okay. Yeah, and I think just to comment on the incineration, I mean, the concern is that incineration doesn't fully get rid of the PFAS, that it creates a byproduct of HF and that can cause additional contamination in the communities where the incinerators are. And those tend to be communities that are, environmental justice communities. And so I agree with Kim in the sense that we don't want to just take our pollution and spread it somewhere else. And so I do really hope that before we go back to incinerating, that is fully vetted and we can be sure that we're not taking our problem and then creating an additional problem with incineration. So
Understood. Environmental justice is a factor in the decisions in all of these documents as well. So just so you know, it's a big topic in the Air Force and something that was brought under, it was given a lot of attention while they were making these decisions and we're going viewing all of these options for getting rid of PFAS. So rest assured, it's being considered.
okay. And so you'll update us if our waste here at Pease becomes, the plan shifts back to incineration?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple questions about the presentation. So for site 8, there was a slide that showed that the PFOS levels, just PFOS, are dropping in certain brooks, and that was to show that even though Site 8 isn't operating at the most efficient capacity, that it's still, you know, doing its work in terms of levels out in the community. But I'm just curious, why was it just PFOS? Are there other PFAS levels that are dropping too? And that stood out to me that it was just one PFAS. I mean, we care about all the PFAS that you're detecting and all of them that are dropping or not dropping. So can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So PFOS, we know is really the main driver, and that's the key compound that we see in AFFF. So that was provided as an example compound. We do see others, PFOA in some of these locations also decreasing, probable decreasing. It's a statistical term that has meaning behind it, but PFOS was used because that's the driver that we look at in this case, but we are looking at all of those 5 compounds that we frequently talk about.
Thank you.
Mike, do you have a
Let her finish. No, she's doing my work for me, as usual.
My other question was just more, I guess, a big picture question, but if you start adding in the sand filtration, and you talked a lot about optimizing the plant, right? Like, we know that this plant was, I think, one of the first of its kind ever created to address this issue. And so now that we're several years in, and we know a lot more than we know now, now than we knew then. What would, if you were to redesign this plan again, what would you do differently? I mean, are we just kind of making small adjustments because we're just dealing with the plant that we have? Or should we be scrapping it and starting over? I mean, there's a lot of challenges at Site 8. It hasn't run to the best capacity that I think anyone anticipated. So, yeah, it's kind of a bigger picture question, but.
No, I understand. And a lot of what we're trying to do with this optimization plan that I tried to cover at a fairly high level in that presentation is taking those lessons that we've learned over the past 5 years and applying them, and really taking a holistic approach, stepping back, seeing what's working well and what's not, and whatever isn't working well, we're going to try our best to replace it with what will work. And I think with the experience that we've had over these past number of years, that we really do have a good hold on what those processes and items within that plant are that should be upgraded or replaced or duplicated or whatever it may be. So this plan is really, I think, the best balance for making use of the good that's there, while applying what new things we think are going to be necessary to get the plant running at capacity regularly. Does that answer your question, Helen?
Sure. And then I think just the last question was, there was also a figure in your presentation where it showed, I think, the capacity going up over time in terms of, trying to think of the graph, but I think what you were trying to convey in that was that you were treating more water because of some of the adjustments that you've made. But what's not clear to me is that we're showing improvement, but what would be your expectation? Like, what would be the plant operating at the most efficient capacity? I'm glad that it's getting better.
Just a clarifier to that. Do you mean right now or after the optimization plan has kind of been executed?
Yeah, I mean, after, like, what opportunities are we missing because it's not optimized yet, is my question. Like,
I know what you mean. I'm not sure I can answer that in entirety. Basically, one of the points I tried to make there was that with the equipment that's in there right now, we're getting to the upper limit of what we think we can regularly dependably treat. So the 55 gallons a minute with 10 wells running at limited capacity, we're getting up to the upper limit of the existing equipment's capacity. But the point and the goal of the optimization plan is to be able to operate all 10 wells at their full capacity, which we think is somewhere around 100 gallons a minute, 110, something like that. We're not entirely sure. But the goal would be to be able to reliably do all that with a little bit of extra wiggle room to allow for seasonal changes or extra processing that we have to do from stuff within the plant. So that is the goal of this optimization plan.
And keep in mind that we're learning a lot of lessons with regarding the chemistry and how things are changing as we're going forward, and we're taking these into consideration. You know, obviously down the road, there's gonna be a rod and, likely, you know, and we're learning what we can and can't do with this type of water and with all the other impurities that are in it, such as the metals. And so, as we do these stepwise things, we're finding out what works and what doesn't. I mean, you know, we're finding great success with the changeable, with the single pass resins compared to the general. And that's something we couldn't guess that 2 years ago doing all this. And we're getting our next steps to try the sand filter. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And so it's hard to say. It's a challenging site. Keeping our minds open with this, and you know, Jack and the team are doing a great job of, you know, maintaining that hydraulic control, which is really the point of that system. And while getting those flow rates up so they can just get more and more mass out. And so we're all paying attention and we're looking to the future as well.
So as kind of like the big tough thumper for site A, I want to commend you that it's getting this type of attention, and maybe it was getting it all along, but now there's something in writing, there's an explanation, it's a much better extent than we've ever received. And importantly, you've acknowledged, which the community really needs to know this, because we're 5 years into, well, it was discovered in 2014, we're 5 years since the system went online. And I think, you know, there's been a lot of needed attention for the Haven well. And now you really appear to be working substantially to improve this, to get to the promised design capacity when it went online in 2018. I mean, you just, you know, told us what Hank had told us before, that, you know, the design capacity was 100, 110. And we're, you know, we've gone, you know, in your chart over 4 or 5 months here. I think it's basically that, or 8 months. We've gone from third, you know, you take 5.3 as a high point and say we've gone from 39 to 55 gallons per minute. And you've also given some validation in writing about the efficacy of this as it relates to sampling from the brook and from the spring, which are, you know, going right through Newington a little bit. So I think if you build on this, we're headed in the right direction. And where the community, if they had this information, were conversant on this, would feel good that something was going on, because there's no question this is going to be an extended process. The dates for the preparation and finalization of a rod have done nothing but extend, all for good reasons. And there are likely more good reasons when you're dealing with an emergent contaminant, that there's new information all the time, not just at your site, but just generally. This is going to take a lot longer. And to me, that puts a bigger burden on site 8 being successfully addressed to the extent you can with the resources you have. And I just say it would really be helpful if, instead of the validation point, and I'm glad you gave us something, but the validation point is what happened over a very short period of time between, you know, at the plant And in the spring and in the brook. If all along we were getting, you were providing the community with information that showed how this was working, showed, quarterly, yearly test results that showed and compare that with what the standard is. I mean, I see that it's gone down significantly from 2018 to now in the spring and in the brook. But what's the standard that it should be at? What's the background? Contaminant.
If anybody wants to respond or get in on any of that.
Well, we don't have there's no surface water standard.
Right.
Established at this point, right?
Right, so, and I'm not, and I know the state's working on that, and and I'm sure the EPA is working on that. But until we have some standard against which we can say, well, this is successful, really the standard has to be, you don't want any going in.
We have a screening level that established that's based on a risk number, but we don't have anything that's promulgated. As Pete said, we don't have anything that's promulgated, but we have what we're using as a benchmark, a number that's generated for non-cancer risk based on a 0.1 hazard index. So we do have that number. So that's what we're measuring.
Well, again, I think if that were presented, it would be helpful.
Yeah, when you see those, and again, in past presentations, you've seen these little flags that'll show green, and it's usually below that threshold, that screening level, and then if it's red, it's above, and then there's gradations of that. So they have shown that, I think in the past, we've seen some of that data.
And we don't meet that often, and we have new members, so maybe this is just a reminder that we can keep.
No, in the locations are often not clear. I mean, it's a big area that most of the time we've seen those presentations. They've been on maps or charts or whatever you want to call them, slides that are of the entire base in Upper Newington.
Yeah, I think we've identified those major water courses.
You have, but the testing is
And that's where we're
testing over
measuring.
time.
That's where we're measuring. So I think we presented that data. And that data's been presented in the past.
And Michael, so ongoing, keep it going, forward, keep sharing that with us, so we can see the progress for the community on these particular water bodies. I want to make sure I want to go to Andrea, who I know has like several big things to get in. If that's okay for now.
Sure, are you able to share my slide? I am able to share your slide. All right, while you do that, I'll go ahead and get started, just because I know we're time. I had a few updates I wanted to share with the larger RAB in the community. At our May meeting, we had just learned that we were approved for TASC through the EPA, which is the Technical Assistance Services for Communities. It is a program that allows communities like ours to have access to independent scientific experts who can review documents, help us better understand the process, help us make comments on work plans and many other things. And so we started looking into this earlier this year, and we're very happy to have had that approved. So what I wanted to quickly provide to all of you is we do have some of our scientists in the audience tonight. They did introduce themselves, but we have Hagai, Carmen, and Arcel in person, and we have Claire, who's over Zoom, and we're grateful that they're here tonight with us and for their work with us. I wanted to let you all know that we've met with them several times since May. May and June, we had some preliminary meetings to talk about what our needs are and what their capabilities are. In July, they came up here to Pease and attended the RAB workshop. They toured the treatment plans, they met with the community, and they also got a nice tour from Mike and Peggy of Newington and just got a better understanding of our community. And then in September and October, we had 2 meetings with them where they reported out to us. After they reviewed some historical documents at Pease, they reported out their impressions on that and drafted some comments for us to share if we would like with the Air Force and our regulators, and we have done that. Do you mind going to the next slide? Sorry. Actually, this isn't the slide I just did. We'll do the next one. Thank you. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds, just because I know we're running short on time, but in September, we met to hear SKIO's impression of the preliminary assessment, the ESI expanded site inspection, the remedial investigation work plan. So they reviewed those documents, they gave us their impressions, and some high level things that came out of their review of that work was wanting to know if the RI and the human health risk assessment will incorporate state of the science knowledge on screening levels and toxicity levels. As we know, science with PFAS continues to evolve. And so in some of those older reports, there were outdated screening levels used to make conclusions. And so we just want to know moving forward, how will the state of the science be used, moving forward with additional work and documents. Some other things that came up, one thing was that there's groundwater to surface water pathways that are being excluded due to the presence of marine clay and silt that prevented groundwater to surface water linkages. So wondering if in the upcoming RI, will they look at marine clay and silt isolation? Next slide, please. I will get into, we put all these comments and questions in writing. All of that was shared with the RAB. So that's why I don't really want to get into too much. We want to go to the next slide. So the meeting that we had with them in October, we focused on the baseline human health risk assessment work plan. And again, a lot of questions came out of that around fin fish, some things about shellfish and screening levels, and some questions that we had regarding additional testing. And so again, in the interest of time, I don't want to go through all the questions, but we can go ahead and move past to the next slide, please. So our next steps with SKIO, for all of you to know, is that there is an investigation informal technical information report, ITIR, we'll call it that, that we're being told is a draft right now, that the Air Force has created with all the current data from all of the work that's been done at P so far. It's our understanding that that draft will be shared with the RAB and that we can also share that with SKIO. And that our next steps with them is that we'd like them to review that report, and we'd like them to be able to give us their impressions on all of that. And again, so we can help give comments on data gaps or any areas of concern that we may see from our perspective. And one thing that we did talk about before our group met with some SKIO folks before we came in is what's going to be the best way for us to have a conversation and an ongoing dialogue with the Air Force and their consultants and the regulators about that report. And that's something we're continuing to talk about, but I think we certainly see the value in having SKIO review it, having some type of meeting with the Air Force and their consultants to kind of clarify questions, ask information back and forth. We can submit comments and then also maybe have a technical session. In the past, when we've done technical sessions with the Air Force, particularly around, work plans, we have found that that's been incredibly valuable to the community to be able to have those sessions with everyone at the table. We've seen a lot of value in that, and we certainly would see the value in doing that again. So, if you could go to the next slide, please. So that leads me to, because of all this work that we've done with SKIO, our RAB has sent a letter to the Air Force, the EPA, and DES. We sent it back in October. And again, everyone on the RAB should have received a copy of that letter. A couple things is certainly all the comments that came out of the review of these historical documents are certainly in that letter, and there's many of them. And so again, we're not going to get into all those questions tonight, but just wanted everyone to be aware that there is a letter out there with lots of comments and questions. One thing that kind of limited us or made the process a little bit more challenging is there were technical memos that were associated with the human health risk assessment that we weren't given and SKIO wasn't given. And so I think a lot of the questions or some of the questions that we had probably could have been addressed in those technical memos, but we didn't have them at the time when we did the review. And it kind of revealed a bigger issue, I think, to our RAB, and especially I know some of the newer members were asking is, well, when documents get published pertaining to the work of the RAB, how are we notified? How do we become aware? How did we know that there were 20 plus technical memos associated with the human health risk assessment? And the reality is that there is no formal process in place to notify RAB members of that information. And so, one of the requests that we put in our letter was that we would like to have notification when documents go to the administrative record or when they go to New Hampshire DES One Stop, because, you know, that isn't something that I think RAB members are routinely scanning and looking for. And if anyone's ever been on the administrative record and One Stop, it's not particularly the most user-friendly place to look for information. And so that's one issue that I think came out of this process for us, is that we need to have better awareness of when documents are available. The other thing is we need some training on how to access these websites. Again, we have 5 new RAB members this year. So having an understanding of how we can get access to this information, even if it's there, it's not the most user-friendly to log in and find it. And then, we also asked about the ITIR report and having a future technical session. So we'll, look forward to that response. And then the last thing was asking for an update on data sharing policy, which my understanding is Chris is going to provide us tonight. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that letter, aware of our high level asks. And then, want to go to the next slide? Okay, I just have 2 other quick things I wanted to make sure the RAB was aware of. There were 2 policies that DoD issued this summer that I thought was really important for the RAB to know and the broader community to know. One was in July, the memorandum for taking interim action to address PFAS migration from DoD installations and National Guard facilities. These memos were shared with you again before the RAB from ONA, but really the first one talks about prioritizing implementation of interim actions as expeditiously as possible. Talks about like removing soil and hotspots, installation of groundwater extraction systems. And so because of this policy, I know on the community side, we have 2 questions regarding that. I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about that tonight. Are there additional interim remedies that can be taken at PEAS to address cleanup of PFAS? And then also when we talk about the Site 8 treatment system, even though there's these proposed actions to fix and improve it, is there other things that can be done based on this policy that can address PFAS? And then the second policy update that I wanted to share, one that we've talked a whole lot about here in the last couple of years, is data sharing and how we have had limited data sharing from the Air Force in terms of locations of where samples were taken and data. And so there was a policy that went into place in late August that should, I think, fix a lot of the data sharing issues that we're having here at PEAS. But I have yet to hear from the Air Force as to how that will change. And so I hope that's, again, something that Chris will be able to give us more information on tonight. And then the last slide. The last thing is, at our last meeting in May, we had talked about this DoD initiative, Environmental Cleanup Communication and Outreach Initiative, ECCOI, a DoD effort focused on enhancing communication with communities surrounding former and current DoD installations. So as of last May, we had not been a chosen site to be picked for this initiative to be interviewed and for the DoD to learn more about our process. But we later learned that we were a selected site, and back in July, a team from DoD did come up to PEAS and they observed our RAB workshop, and they did conduct interviews with community stakeholders and RAB members. They also interviewed prior RAB members to really just get a sense of, what's working well here, what's not. And we're grateful for the opportunity to be able to participate in this. And I look forward to any outcomes or recommendations that the ECCOI team has. And I think that's it. So I guess I'll pause there, and I think we can now have more of a discussion. Thanks.
Questions, comments, responses?
Oh, yeah,
Chris?
first, to mention the letter, so the Air Force is currently taking the lead on drafting a response to the letter. That will get done in the coming weeks. There's been a lot of prep for the RAB, so there's some approvals that have to be done as well. But once we're complete, once the Air Force team is complete with their responses, it will get sent over to DES and EPA for comment and additions as necessary, at which point we'll be able to finalize it and get it back to them, right? So I don't have a schedule for you. It's gonna have to go up to several levels above me for approval. Due to it being in writing, so it's just letting you know it's in progress.
Okay.
It's important to us, and we're gonna get it done as soon as possible.
Okay, and we wanted some clarity. I know Jamie Payne couldn't be here tonight, but he had asked about like a timeline, but then also, will the response be coming from the Air Force, but DES and EPA will sign it, or will they kind of send a separate letter? We weren't sure. I know we sent it to all three of you, so I don't know how that complicates the response, but
They're gonna take the lead when we review the response. I think a lot of them is focused on some of the technical issues that were identified. So we'll review that with them
okay.
in concert, and then they'll, whether we sign it or, they'll send it out, and we'll probably provide a currency, if that's what you're looking for.
I wasn't sure. I
Yeah,
honestly
But
didn't
that's what
know.
we'll do. We'll work with them in concert, but they will take the lead.
Okay,
Sure, and if there was something that were agency specific that they couldn't answer on our behalf, then we would do a follow-up response.
okay. Sounds good. Do you have like an estimated time frame, Chris? I know, like, are we
I
talking
don't.
months, weeks?
No, it shouldn't be months. So again, the higher ups that are going to approve this as well, we're going into the holidays. I don't know what people's league schedules are like. I don't want to answer them. I don't routinely talk to them and roll above my pay grade. Yeah, it's important. It's important to many people, and so it'll get done sooner rather than later, is all I can say.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think it's been elevated, so with an elevation of that, when it gets that kind of visibility, then it sort of has to follow sort of path. That's what happened.
To be honest, I think that it would be most useful to, when you receive that response, to also have had the chance to look at the ITIR report, because a lot of the technical data that's gonna be referenced to answer those questions is right there in that report. So having both documents at the same time, I think will be very helpful.
Is there a timeline on when the ITIR will be made available to the RAB? Because that would be helpful to know too, as we plan our next steps with SPIO and.
Sure, I believe Peter, you have some comments that you're sending to us, and also we're updating it based on the information I'm about to give you on data sharing. So we're able to make some modifications and improvements to it, which will be a benefit to y'all as well. And so that's gonna take a little bit of time. Maps are not easy to make, and we also, well, I'll get to it, I don't wanna jump ahead.
Okay.
But, yeah, we're making some changes, some beneficial changes.
But it's worth it because it makes them easier
It'll
to
make it much
read
more
and
easy for you to
understand.
understand. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that really should hold it up, but I think that's an important element to this, where the state of the document now, there's probably some tweaks that will facilitate your review. So I think that makes, you're gonna have to take some time, though, to probably run that gauntlet.
It feels like this is like the natural moment to transition to our next presentation, because these conversations should
Intertwined, yes.
overlap. Thank you. So the next topic on our agenda is Department of Defense policy meeting and update on human health risk assessment. And I believe that is Chris and Amy who are gonna be doing those pieces. And we have an hour and 15 minutes, so we can use that as some presentation, some conversation. RAD members, if you have questions, either just try to catch the presenter's eye or put your placard up and I'll make sure you can get in. I might confer with them about whether they want to finish a couple more slides or when is good to go. And we'll just do that kind of casually, but if you put your placard up, I can help with that. Chris, shall I put up a slide? Let's
Let it rip.
is that the next thing? Okay.
And apologies, you haven't seen these slides. Normally I like to give them to you beforehand. I got these slides yesterday while I was in flight. So that's the newness of them. So again, we've got some clarification for the DoD PII policy. This is gonna be good news for you. So I almost have to read them off because again, I haven't had time to memorize them. So this is names and addresses of private individuals. They are considered PII, but DoD is not releasing them with our sampling results. So people's private drinking water wells, their names and addresses will never be released to the public, but we can, if they give them, I'll get through it. But the latitude and longitude data is not. But we're protecting this information unless they give us permission to share it. So first, people with their own private drinking water wells in the back, we have to get their permission to share that information, location and sampling results. And we're going to be asking for that. So that's, I know that was a big one. That was what the intent of the NDAA was all along. After we've gone around the loop here, and now we're kind of getting into the nitty gritty of what was intended with the NDAA. So these slides will kind of support that. So now it was meant to only protect private drinking water well. Something went off the rails a little bit, but we're back on track. And so that's what these slides are gonna be showing you as well, but, just to let you know that, yeah, those names and addresses in particular will never be shared. And that's affecting how some of the maps are going to change as well. The big one here is also the commercial and private and public entities are no longer protected on private land. So those wells information will be shared, latitude and longitude included. So that's going to change the maps quite a bit. You'll see a lot more space open up. I think it'll be easier for you all to interpret what's going on. Again, I think this is a good news story for us here at Pease, where our interpretation was such that we were having to cover a lot of stuff on. So any questions on this slide before we jump through? We can do it that way or save it to the end. No. All right, so again, this opens it up to the regulators as well. So latitude and longitude associated with results of non-drinking water samples is not protected anymore, and will be shared with the regulatory agencies and will be shared with the RED. So examples are non-drinking water samples such as soil, surface water, sediment, and groundwater samples. Again, even on private property, we were protecting that. That is no longer the case. It will be shared as soon as possible. We are doing that in the ITIR, as I mentioned, which is currently in draft, and we're also modifying it because of this to include all of that latitude and longitude data. A part of that is we're trying to convert data, and correct me if I'm wrong back there, Lauren, but the way the Air Force tracks latitude and longitudinal data is not how you could just type it into the Google Maps and find the spot on a location, right? So we have to convert all of that information, which is also not, we can't do that with the flip of the switch. It takes a little bit of time. So we're making it easier for the common person to, if they really want to look at something on Google Earth or something like that, they can just grab it off the tables and make it useful for the common man to work in. And you don't have to have an urban's mastery to get it done.
Waiting for like the collective sigh, like,
Yeah, right.
like everybody take a breath. We got like. That's so much. Thank you.
All right, so, and also along those lines, drinking water and non-drinking water samples taken from non-residential. So if a company has a drinking water well, that is also no longer protected. So we're really down in the nitty-gritty, protecting only those private residential drinking water samples. And that's not the end all for them as well. And again, that stuff will be made publicly available. It will all be in the ITIR. And that's a comment. So good news all around. All right, next one, please. There's no other slides. All right, so you went too far. Yeah. All right, so we're going to need new rights of entry for many locations that will allow us, and there's specific language that we have to put in there in order to now collect the sample. So in the future, when people are part of the program, if they don't allow us to share the data, we're going to have to move on essentially. So they won't be a part of the program anymore. Which may complicate things for us a little bit with trying to drop some new wells somewhere and people don't want the data share. We are not allowed to pursue that particular location. But we suspect that won't be much of an issue. Let's make sure this is moving. But yeah, we want to make sure that going forward, any data that we collect is shareable with you. So we're trying to avoid any issues with transparency in the future. And that may put a little bit of pressure on us trying to find locations for data collection in the future. But again, we're trying to make sure that it's going forward that's useful to y'all as a community, and you have access to that information. Okay, so data previously collected, particularly those on private drinking water wells. We can request permission from those property owners to share the latitude and longitude data and the samples of the results, and also share them with the state regulatory agencies. So we're looking to do that now, and I believe that it's going to be on the next slide, but we have to reach out to the people. We have to go through each and every one of our access agreements at this point and look to see what data we can and can't share per the current access agreement, and if they have to be modified, and then reach out with either a letter to kind of amend their current access agreement or possibly even get a new one. But that's what we're doing now. And again, all in an effort to be transparent as possible and share all this information in the ITIR, graphs, everything, so that you know. All right, and thank you for the nice transition there, Rona. So what we're doing to implement here at Pease is we are drafting those letters to obtain consent to share latitude and longitude associated with the sample results from those private drinking water well locations. We expect them to be mailed as soon as possible. They are currently in draft with the people, the appropriate people. And again, like I said, we're going to have to go through each individual access agreement to see who's getting one of these letters and who we don't have to do it for yet. So that's currently in progress. We're using the required language that's in the policy memo that came out in order to do that. So that's coming out, and we, again, all new ones will. And then the new massive drawings are going to include lat and longitudinal data associated with results from the non-drinking water samples, all of them, even on what are considered private but commercial properties. Drinking water samples from non-residential and drinking water samples from residential properties that have permitted latitude and longitudinal data sharing. These three specific maps, we don't know what form they're going to take yet, or if we can kind of combine them all. There's some policy decisions out there on that, but just know the data is it's coming forth, and it's gonna change the way you guys get to see things, and hopefully in a very positive manner. And then you'll be able to cross-reference that with data tables that have the specific concentrations.
Can I ask how many properties are affected by these letters or this sharing?
It's a lot. There's quite a bit of private property. Owners in our private well program. So we have to go through all of them. I don't know.
How many samples, like how much is this gonna expand our visibility of the samples?
As far as private drinking water wells themselves.
Yeah.
There are 62 currently.
Sorry?
62.
I was gonna say, we should all try to speak up just a little, so people in the back of the room.
And some of them have been in the program for quite some time, so there are some historical docs out there.
Michael, is your card up in
Yeah, unless there's someone else that hasn't spoken, certainly defer to you. Chris, this is very encouraging, and it's in your efforts to go back to the existing private well owners. I would suggest that you should feel fully authorized to say that part of the impetus for this, or the impetus for this, came from members of your community board who are trying to get information that can be submitted to the rest of the community. So when you go to them, and I'm thinking particularly of private well owners that have, negative result for PFOAs, okay? Right now, we don't know where those wells are. That alone, to have the latitude and longitude of where wells are that have shown an absence of PFOA would be a tremendous help to understanding particularly the process here, which puts it all in a certain location and not on the west side of the Newington Peninsula. And that, I don't think it damages, risks any damage to their property by acknowledging that they've cooperated with the effort and their property is clean. I know it's a much harder sell to someone with negative results, and I'm sure it will be a harder sell when you go back, with new ones for new wells. But the additional transparency it will provide to the Air Force's efforts here and the Air Force's decisions and expenditures will be well worth it. So this is very encouraging, and if there's something that RAB can do to be of assistance to this, if there's some sort of letter or something that can be you feel would aid in that effort, I think we'd be anxious to do that, because again, we're not looking for bad news here. We're just looking for news. Right? We're looking for something besides what we've seen.
You know, like, I can run that by some people, it's a really good idea, a letter from your fellow community members that are asking you to share their information, I don't see how that could hurt our efforts, and if y'all are willing to do that, I'll ask if we can include it in our request memo letters here. But that does sound pretty powerful and swing, so if you're willing to take that on.
I don't guarantee any results.
Try.
And I'm not sure you want to put. You know, we'll let Andrea sign that. Do the work. For once, instead of her doing all the work.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is really good news. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to DOD for writing this policy, Assistant Secretary Brendan Owens, who signed this policy, and his staff who helped, I'm sure has helped provide clarity. I really am grateful that we've gotten this update tonight. This seems like really good news. The one question I had was, we know that before this policy was in place, data sharing not only was an issue with the community, but also with DES. And so I'm just curious, Peter, you probably are maybe just hearing this for the first time too, but
Yeah, you got these slides.
okay, so, you know, does your initial impression, is this gonna solve the issues that you're having as well? Or do you see any challenges or barriers that you may still experience with getting the information you need to effectively work on this site?
The discrepancy is that people are not willing to share. Technically, our rules require that the responsible party provide the names and addresses and map and lot numbers of any private wells that are impacted. Really, that's a big part of that requirement, is so that we can ensure that the appropriate actions are taken to correct the problem.
Yeah.
In this case, we know that the Air Force is taking those actions, we just don't know where, you know, what the specific locations are. It's kind of an odd situation, because for 8 years I knew where every sample was being collected, I knew everyone's name. I still know everyone's name, except for a handful of wells that have been identified since then, so. The other part of our rules that aren't being addressed by this is, well, the workaround is what we've asked the Air Force to do, and they have applied, which is to put in contact information. If they want to provide the data to us, if they have questions that they want to ask of us, then at least they know how to get a hold of the project manager for the site. And if they have health-related questions, we can put them in touch with our environmental health program folks who can work with them to understand their results better and the ramifications of those things. So, but it's all, I mean, yes, I mean, this is good news.
Right.
And I think, you know, it's not perfect, but it gets us where we need to be at.
Okay, all right, that's good to hear your perspective on that too. All right. Thank you very much. We did have another question, Chris, in my slides about the other policy.
Yeah.
With the interim remedies, and so before we go into the eggs and stuff, I don't know if you have any comments or reactions. That policy, I know when your boss was here in July, Greg Genghis, he briefly mentioned it, when we were all kind of meeting at the workshop. But there was nothing, you know, there was no commitments or anything that we went too much into detail about it, but I'm just curious. Is this a policy that it sounds like your team is aware of, and are there things that you're thinking about under this policy that could help you expedite any additional efforts here at Pease to address PFAS?
It's definitely something we take into consideration. I mean, obviously, we're paying attention to what's going on at Site 8, or possibly, you know, making a move underneath a guidance like this. I know we talk quite regularly about some of the options, but really it's kind of a viable, economically reasonable response. I don't think we see one really yet, outside of keeping the plants going and optimizing those. And that we're very fortunate to have those systems in place where many other people don't. And so I think we have to keep that into consideration when we discuss some of these things. But you know, I haven't seen really a huge hotspot where, you know, some ground, just digging up more PFAS that we'd have to send to a landfill would be economically feasible right now. But yeah, we definitely pay attention, and at some point this may come into play, but right now I don't foresee it in the near future, any other removal actions on a grand scale.
Would there be any, we haven't heard it discussed tonight, but I know one of the, besides the iron, or perhaps increasing the iron problem, at Site A has been the fact that the site itself has been, you know, basically adulterated, apart from PFAS, by the earlier cleanup efforts. You know, all the time and money that was spent to address the other aspects of a firefighting school, which is the VOCs and all of that that's gone into that site. And we've certainly heard at various times when Site 8 has been discussed, that the chemistry of the site is unique. Is there some prospect of examining that as to whether there's something that can be done to reverse what's there? Not necessarily removal, but something that would, I mean, I think everybody'd like to see Site 8 removed, and, you know, but assuming that that's not considered viable, whether there's some either experiential source or testing source, God forbid, be a pilot project where you deal with the fact that the site itself is so hard to work with. I mean, when you come in at half your design capacity after 5 years of optimization, I mean, that's gotta be a message that there's something tough here. So I just say to you, in light of that policy, normally money follows policy. In light of that, if we have something unique about this site, that if the visibility can be, you know, elevated, especially where there's, you know, additional time has been asked for to complete the ROD and do this, that, yeah, I mean, normally when polluters seek agreements from the government to have extensions of time to do things, one of the things that's looked at is what are you doing in the interim? And I would just urge you to just keep that on the table as to whether it doesn't have to be what we talk about at this table, you know, harebrained ideas that we come up with, but just keep on the table that there's an opportunity to do something at this site, just like you did with the Grafton Road water system. I mean, that's a big headline. It's gotta be throughout the country. Well, maybe there's a lot of firefighting schools around the country. I don't know if you've got one at Brunswick now.
Yeah, well, we're doing what they did at Grafton, we're gonna be doing in town of Brunswick as well.
So I just throw that out there. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Think we're ready to do one of two things.
One more
So Brad,
question here.
oh, Sam, sorry.
Yeah, so this is weird, but you mentioned that bulk soil extraction removal is gonna be cost prohibitive. And I can imagine that it is expensive, but meanwhile, we're also trucking how many tons of resin to Alabama and Michigan. I mean, as RAD members, we have very limited visibility into, obviously no control, but also limited visibility into what these budgets look like, what these decisions, if they're being made on a cost basis. Like, is there any mechanism for us to get some sort of wiggle into that? I think I did see at some point, total operational expenditure for Site 8, which was, you know, a large number, which I don't recall at the moment, but I know it was pretty shocking. So given that, it's an interim mitigation system, and it comes with all these ongoing operational costs of producing resin, incinerating resin, whatever the case may be. Is there any way we can get an insight as how does that decision get?
As far as like giving you access to our operating budgets, locally speaking, well, I mean, actually, I don't think we've ever discussed that. I don't even know if it's allowed or if it's not.
I'm sure it's not allowed, but I mean, it's like. but I want. Yeah, I mean, it's just like we're given sort of a hand wavy thing, like this makes sense, and then we're gonna keep, you know. Maybe this is a sunk cost thing with site eight. It's like Mike said, if it's, you know, doing all these optimization, continuing investing money in it, it's still 50%.
Well, remember, it's not always at 50%. It is fully functioning in its job of keeping the PFAS outside it.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that during these conversations. So flow rate is a different, it's a metric, it's a measurable piece of that system, but even that PFAS there is a primary one.
Right, it's having an effect downstream, which I've seen, and that's important. But, you know. Yeah, I guess I just, look, once again, I get, okay, this decision's been made by some people somewhere based on something, and we just have very. I'm looking for ways to peel back the curtain. And that's just I guess it's just more of a comment, since there's probably no mechanism for us to see those numbers or anything.
Right.
But, that's it.
Thank you, Sam.
Well, just to kind of follow, it's like, you know, budgeting for BRAC is well, it's above me, but, you know, I do like line program separately. I won't get into it. We have our budget for optimization, and we use the money as we need to make sure that thing is doing its job and keeping that control in that area. And that's it. It's not like it's, you know, a huge money making thing for anybody or anything like that. It is what it is. We do it so that we can meet our goals and we pay the bills.
Do you have enough money, Chris? Are you struggling? Like, has there been budget cuts or has there been anything you can't do because of budget limitations?
No, I mean, the plant is, given its chemistry, that thing running really well. So far, we really haven't been hamstrung by funds.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. All this. Round members, do you want to take a 10-minute break now or go on to the eggs? So show of hands at the table. Those are your two choices. 10-minute break now or do the eggs first and then take a stretch break. 10-minute break now. I'm just trying to read the room.
Oh,
10-minute break after the eggs. Seems like after.
I'm just trying to get people to eat cake. That's right.
Some of you.
Forget about the egg.
It's on a 5-minute cake break.
Anyone can stand up at any point in the whole room and go help yourself. Feel free to like stretch and do what you need to do to be comfortable. I trust all the people who are virtual are doing that themselves wherever they are. All right, I think you are up, Amy.
Okay, we can show slides.
I will show slides.
Okay, so we have 2 slides and then we'll get into the eggs. So the first 2 slides are just kind of a reminder of the stuff that we talked about in May. Just to go back in time a little bit, we talked about the baseline risk assessment work plan. And we talked about some of the key points and, you know, we saw the presentation that Theo gave and the questions that were raised, and we thought maybe our presentation in May wasn't super clear. So we just have a couple of kind of reminder highlight slides on that. I don't know, you know, that we can necessarily have any real dialogue about it because a lot of those questions have officially gone through formal channels to the Air Force now. But this is just, you know, a little bit of a reminder. If anybody, you know, has questions that could be answered by the presentation in May, a lot of that information is there. So again, we talked about the fact that a baseline risk assessment work plan was done in 2020, 21, and you know, in PFAS years, it's 100 years old, right? Like stuff changes really quickly. So, you know, when we lay out the methodology in one of those work plans, the point is to just lay out the methods for conducting the baseline risk assessment, but it's circular process to always use what is current at the time that we draft the risk assessment. So, you know, just for ultimate clarity, what's in that risk assessment work plan, just a snapshot of what was current at the time it was written. It has nothing to do with what we will be doing in the future. We will be rerunning it using current values. So just want to make sure that's super clear. And then just a couple other little points that are in there. We are, you know, this is ITIR document that's coming out. That's going to have all the updated screening levels that were current when that document was written. So again, stuff does tend to change, but when something is drafted, we use the values that are current at the time, and that used the 2022 values at that time. which also included the dermal pathways for soil and water. So again, that's what was current at the time the document was written, so that's what we used. There's some more information about exposure areas being developed for risk assessment deliverables. And again, the ITIR document has all the data that was collected at the time that report was prepared, you know, including things like eggs, fish, the biota data that was collected at the time. Let's go to the next slide, Ona. This is basically a slide that was provided in that last May presentation. And you can see in the first one, we talked about the fact that there were only 3 chemicals that were used in that 2021 work plan, because those were the ones that we had data for, and we had toxicity values that were adopted by DOD and US EPA at the time. And that has now changed. So when you look at the 2022 values, which are going to be consistent with what's presented in that ITIR report, you will see that there are additional chemicals that are, you know, we have tox values for, so now they can be above screening levels, things like EFHXS. You know, we didn't have a screening value for it before, now we do. So now you see it showing up above screening values. These things evolve over time as we get new tox data and as we get new data from the site. So when you see these updated deliverables, they're going to provide updated information using current data and current tox values. So, you know, that information is in there, it's in the May slides. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there and remind people that that has been presented and discussed. So now we can move on to the eggs. So we've talked a little bit about eggs. We talked about eggs when we were going out and collecting the data. We know that there are a lot of different ways that PFAS can get into chicken eggs. There's drinking water, of course, if the chicken is drinking water and there's PFAS in the water. When we first started targeting eggs and peas, that was the pathway we were primarily looking at, right? So chickens drinking water, there's PFAS detected in the water, so we checked the eggs. There are other ways that PFAS can enter a chicken egg. So if you see the circle, moving circle, it's not really moving on the left. You know, you've got water, you've got diet. There can be PFAS in commercial chicken feed. There can be, if you think of kitchen waste, you know, there's packaging. Sometimes food packaging has PFAS on it. There's, you know, PFAS just in the human diet. So if you're feeding some of that waste to chickens, that's a way for chickens to have PFAS. Soil is another way. The question is where the PFAS comes from in the soil, but that is another way. Chickens eat a certain amount of soil, they pick up stones as part of their diet, and they ingest PFAS that way. Sometimes it can also be in bedding. That's more likely if you're using a paper-based bedding. They actually have paper-based chicken beddings. Wouldn't think it would be as likely if you're using something that's shavings or wood-based necessarily, but there are different beddings out there that sometimes people will use. So if we look at some of the bullet points there, as I said, chickens, they do ingest stones, and they do ingest quite a bit of dirt. This next bullet is more of a literature review. We have not done our own study based on commercial eggs versus backyard produce, but when we've looked across the literature, it appears that the free range backyard chicken eggs tend to have more PFAS than commercial eggs generally. So there are different sources potentially at peas. As we said, groundwater use as drinking water is the one that we were primarily targeting. But some of these other things may be relevant, things like kitchen waste, and certainly soil, which we'll talk more a bit about. And just for your information, when we sample eggs, we typically split the yolk and the white. So you'll see that there's data for the yolk and there's data for the white, and PFAS has only been detected in the egg yolk at peas, which is also consistent with egg data across the board. So next slide. So here's a reminder of the sampling program that we did. The first year, 2021, again, we were only looking at chicken eggs if they were drinking private well water. So there were only 2 homes that were identified that had chickens, were producing eggs, and had private well water. At this time, we had definitively decided to do yolk versus white sampling. So we did a whole egg sample and we did yolk versus white sample as well. For 2022, we resampled those private well water locations. And then we also, well, at the time, we were assuming that there was no possible pathway to peas for other homes that didn't have private well water. So we sampled an additional 5 properties. So we did a total of 7 properties, which included 2 that have private wells, and then 5 where they're drinking municipal water. So there's no PFAS in the water in those. And in all of the properties, we did yolk versus white. And again, PFOS and any other PFAS was only detected in the yolk, not in the white of those samples. And at those properties, we also did collocated media. So we looked at the soil, we looked at the groundwater for the 2 properties where that was relevant. We sampled chicken feed at all the properties. Go to the next. So here are the results. We have, I'll just walk you through what's in this table. And this is a combination of the 2021 and 2022 results. If you go across to the left-hand side, we're showing 4 of the PFAS. These 4 are of all the ones that we have US EPA toxicity values for. These are the only ones that were detected. There were some other PFAS detected, but they are not PFAS that have tox values. So the next column is the number of properties. Again, so it's out of 7. So if it shows on the first one 6, colon 7, that's 6 properties had a detection of PFOS out of 7 total properties. So 1 was non-detect. And so going down for PFOA, that was only detected at 1 property. PFNA was detected at 3, and PFBA was detected in 7 properties. And the next 2 columns, we have our egg yolk concentrations. And we have not shown the egg white because again, they were all non-detect. And the detection limit is shown in one of the footnotes, but they were all non-detect. So you have the minimum concentration and the maximum detected concentrations in egg yolk shown in those 2 columns. And then what we did is we estimated what the whole egg concentration would be, because of course, sometimes you can eat only an egg white or an egg yolk, but typically you eat a full egg. So what we did is we looked at the ratio of egg white to egg yolk and used the detection limit, half the detection limit as a surrogate to see what the concentration might be across an entire egg. So that's what's shown in the final 2 columns. You have the minimum estimated concentration and the maximum estimated concentration of a whole, eating 1 whole egg. And let's see, there are J flags on those yolk concentrations, I just want to point out. Those J flags, they mean it's an estimated value. It's generally because it's a low concentration. Egg data can be a little bit tricky to analyze. There are some proteins in the egg that cause some issues. So I'm not a chemist, so I'm not going to speak to that, but that's what those J flags are there for. Okay, and then this slide is showing you basically how the soil concentrations and the egg concentrations align. So what we're showing you is that estimated whole egg concentration. So the estimated whole egg is in the light blue, and I apologize for the color choices here for using a template that we don't have a lot of ability to change. So light blue and dark blue, unfortunately, was the best we could do for contrast there. But the light blue is that estimated whole egg concentration, and the dark blue is the soil concentration. And this just shows how the soil concentrations, there's some variability, but there has been PFOS detected in egg where PFOS has been detected in soil. And the only property that's not shown there is the one that had PFOS not detected in egg, and it also wasn't detected in soil. So that is, that is a little interesting correlation there between the soil and the egg. And again, groundwater was only relevant to 2 properties, and the groundwater concentrations were orders of magnitude lower than this. They're in the single-digit PPT range, whereas the concentrations you're looking at there are in the PPB range. So that is a very big difference from a couple to PPT. And then, sorry, can you go back? And then, as we said, PFOA was only detected at the 1 property. And it was detected in soil, but that is a different property than it was detected in the egg. So again, not a clear necessarily relationship there, but with PFOS. And then PFNA was detected in eggs, but then not detected in soil. So that's where we are.
And I'll just say that when these slides were created, we didn't have the data sharing slides complete. So all of this information will be in the ITI, all of the individual properties. that were allowed. So 6 of the 7, we actually have one resident who their current access agreement does not allow us to share any of their information. So we have to reach out to them to get that stuff. Yeah, and they'll be one of the people that get a letter. All 6 of the 7 properties will be in the ITIR, the actual data consensus.
Yes. So if there's one egg that there was not PFAS in, out of 7, is that the same egg, the egg that was devoid of other PFAS too?
That egg had, yeah, it was a non-detect for everything. Except
So
possibly,
combined.
I don't know. Sorry, so. PFBA was detected in feed in almost all of the properties and egg. So that one seems to be quite correlating with feed. And so that one, I don't remember off the top of my head which property, but that one may have had PFBA in it. But it had no soil, and that was a property where, I mean, it had no PFAS at all detected in the soil in that property.
Thank you.
So,
Quick question, did you run a correlated to the well testing from where the eggs are located and sort of chart that out to see where the farms are in relationships to the water wells that you're testing?
That's it. So that was, I think you mentioned 2 of the wells, the ones that we started off with, which were really the most viable pathway through water. We tested those and their water wells as well, the PBT. And so, yes, I guess if you will, it's correlated with the wells we tested.
Try it out on a map and see where we're at.
Right, we'll be able to release those maps now because because of the data sharing policy.
Yeah.
At least generally speaking, I mean, again, it's where the location, before, remember, we used to just show kind of, these were where the examples were taken from, the general area. Now you'll.
We know where to buy our eggs.
Know where they're at.
Sam, go ahead.
so the results were all below screening level, you said that?
No, we're not showing the screen level comparison.
Oh, you're not.
So all these results have been shared with the property owners as well, but yeah.
Okay.
We're not making decisions on health related issues.
Right. But so, which of the results were above screening level? Was that all of them?
Some of them, yes.
Some of them.
I mean, again, there are no official screening levels or consumption levels for eggs. So there's really nothing that we can say or do. We'd have to, so USDA or the FDA or something would have to do a study and come out.
They have to establish a screening level specifically for every different type of food.
There, to Air Force's knowledge, there are no agricultural screening levels or safety feeding levels for any food.
Thank you. Andrea.
Yeah, I had a few questions, thank you. So, I'm sorry, just to piggyback on the screening levels, are there screening levels though? I'm sorry, did you say that there were screening levels?
There's calculated levels, right?
There are calculated screening levels, yes.
Okay, and all of our eggs, or all the eggs tested here were above those,
Not all of them.
but majority of them?
There were results that were above the screening levels.
Okay. And are the property owners made aware of that? Were they made aware of the screening levels and that their eggs were above it if they were?
Well, like I said, we've given them the data. They have no interpretation because we can give them interpretation. There's no established.
Did you give them the screening level though? That's the question. No.
This is very confusing, right? This is
There's
something
a
that we
calculated
you're threading here that's.
level, but not an official level.
Right.
So,
You have something you're looking at.
Right.
But it's not promulgated officially, so you.
Right, it's gonna be all a part of, all of this information is gonna be a part of our human health risk assessment. We're not there yet, right? This is one component of a much bigger picture calculation that we're working on. That's underway. And so,
But if you have the screening levels, you should be sharing that with the homeowners. It doesn't seem right to hold that information back.
again, they're not promulgated standards. Right now, the stance is that we have to defer to the people that are not making like I said, we have no established food dietary PFAS from any of the USDA or FDAA. So it's, excuse me.
I know, I feel like you could say that, but just say we have these screening levels. You know, I think you should be sharing the information that you have. Personally, I think that's.
Well, I agree with Andrea, but if that's not something you can do because of your guidelines, is that something the technical team can do? And do they have access to that information?
My technical team?
The
CEO, our technical team.
Because I agree that there's sort of an ethical concern here. What if there's a lot of children eating those eggs and the homeowner just doesn't know how to interpret or also feels that there's not any information to go on. It feels like someone should be reaching out, even if we don't know.
Mhm.
And if you can't, can our people?
Or is this an offer, I don't know, in DES or like?
Yeah,
DHHS?
Jamie isn't here, but you know what he'd say, Mike.
I'm sorry.
Jamie isn't here, but you know, he would say we should ask our EPA regulator.
Yes, no, I sort of agree with what you're saying. I think if there's some way to sort of at least present, again, being, I guess, fully transparent. I think that's not an unreasonable approach to at least say, this is what it is in context with, sort of the particular issues revolving around this particular agricultural product, that's food product. So I would agree with you, and I think you probably feel the same as well.
Yeah, I think information is power. So even with like PFAS in the water, there's so many PFAS in drinking water that's not regulated, there's no standards, but knowing if you have it, you may still make the choice to filter your water, right? Like, even if there's no standards, at least if you know what you're facing, you have the ability to make that choice for yourself. Versus if you don't give people the information, you're not giving them that power.
Yeah, I think too, these numbers all do have there's a basis of how you derive them. So I think you can then provide that and what it means. So this is what the number was based on, a certain consumption rate for that for an egg. And then that can be part of that dialogue with the chicken owner, on the chickens. You could do that. So yeah, I would say more information is, I agree with you.
Let's go to Sam and then Jim and then Kim.
Yes, I have a lot of interest in this because I'm one of those people. I know my property is not in the study, but I eat, our family eats probably 4 or 5 eggs a day, chickens and they get out. But I thought it was interesting that you found, was it PFOA in one egg, but not in the soil?
Right.
So most backyard chicken owners also supplement with feed from Tractor Supply or something, which I certainly do. And that's probably 90% of what they eat. So you said you did test the feed
We
in all
tested
these
the
cases
feed.
as well?
Yeah, the only thing that was detected in the feed was the FDA.
Okay.
And so that was also detected in eggs.
Yeah, okay. So that's interesting.
And we assume that will vary by supplier as well. It's
For sure, yeah.
that's a lot. It's definitely not bird control.
Yeah, that's one.
I was just curious, you said how many eggs you consume a day?
Personally, I eat 3 a day. My rest of the family probably 2 on average.
Thank you. Jim and then Kim.
Right, yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that the screening levels that we're using are to help us identify nature and extent of contamination. We gotta have some kind of a number to identify, is this a concentration that we need to investigate further? There is an adequate margin of safety or conservatism in that number, in those screening levels, that we don't feel that there's an immediate health threat to them, but we're not the agency that has the authority to make a decision about health. We would look to the FDA, the USDA, to set standards for PFAS chemicals in chicken eggs or for any agricultural commodity. The Air Force doesn't promulgate standards for anything. We use standards for water developed by EPA. For any other medium. The Air Force doesn't actually develop those methods.
So I understand that, but we used to think higher levels of lead were okay for kids, and we know that that's certainly not true. Nobody's asking anyone to make a decision about somebody else's health. We're asking for the information to be given to the people who should have the, ability to make those choices for their children or themselves. And if there's not a separate entity that can do that, Newington must have a health officer, and the health officer does public education all the time. And if it were in Portsmouth, I would take the information, if I have the information, and I would do my best and take all the experts that I needed with me to just explain to the family, we don't know everything, but you should be aware of this so that you can make a decision, an informed decision. So it's really simple, actually.
The health officer in Newington is the building inspector. And he's a great guy and been in the job 6 months.
Yeah, I feel for him.
He doesn't have,
Busy guy.
he doesn't have the training or the experience that you have or anything close to it.
But we have a health officer liaison, and that's only one option. My point
No,
is, there-
I'm just saying
Yeah.
it's not even as easy as that.
but it's not difficult.
There's people at this table that have more knowledge than he has, and not me, but
But we also have a state of New Hampshire health officer liaison for exactly that purpose, to help new health officers or to help with technical information, excuse me. And so there's a way that it can be done without putting him on the spot. But I guess my concern is how much time is gonna go by before a decision is made and we determine, I mean, if this is known now, tomorrow, somebody should be reaching out to the property owner. And just saying, we want to have a conversation so that you are fully informed about what we know, which is not everything.
Thank you. So creatively trying to solve this problem, connect the information to the people who are affected. Or might be. Andrea.
Yeah, I echo what Kim is saying. I have a couple of questions, but I echo what Kim is saying. We're not asking the Air Force to make the standards. We're just asking you to inform the people of what screening levels you used and that the levels are above. So I think that that's critically important. You had said there was a property where there was no PFOS in the soil and no PFOS in the egg. Why was that one different? Can you tell us, like, was it further away from the contamination, or why? That's curious.
It was, but actually they had replaced the soil. They had brought in fresh soil, so.
Okay. And did they say why they did that, or was it just?
I don't know that information.
there's lots
off
of.
my head.
Okay,
But yeah, basically the chickens were on non-native soil, so.
okay.
Yeah.
And then in terms of this data compared, is there, I don't know, is there like a national average of what PFAS you would find in chicken eggs? Because, we know that we live in a community that has contamination, but is there data on what you would expect to find in a chicken egg that maybe isn't around a former military base with high levels of PFAS?
Yeah, we haven't done that level of research yet.
Okay.
It is actually on our to-do list, but yeah, into some sort of context.
Is there that data though? Like, does that exist, or you're not sure?
There's some data out there. I know that there's some data. We've certainly, like I said, we've done literature reviews, to try to understand the pathway. We've really been on the sort of on the surplus side of it, trying to figure out, well, how does the PFAS getting into the chicken? That's been kind of our primary angle of attack. So we've done a lot of literature review based on that part of it. So there is certainly data out there about, what's in the chicken. This, that's an important part of figuring out how it got there. We just haven't tabulated it and gone through it and looked at it. But yeah, it's something we'll probably be doing in the next few weeks to try to put that into some context.
Okay. When you have that information, can you please share that with us? I feel like that'd be very helpful to know. I know, like, I'm just thinking of it from the blood testing data, right? It's helpful to know what is the average person versus what's in the blood of someone at peace who drinks the water. Like, you can see there's a difference, so I'm curious how chicken egg data would compare in a similar way.
Yeah, just on that topic, although FDA has not established a safe level of PFAS in any agricultural commodity, I'm aware that they are testing the National Food Database. I mean, they're collecting samples from all types of different food items and analyzing them for PFAS. And I know they have detected PFAS in some types of food, some different types of foods. There's a whole database. it could be, we looked into. And then I think that addresses your question.
Sorry, really quick, did you say, that the egg testing locations are gonna be in the next report, like the bulk?
It's gonna be in the ICI.
Okay, that's okay. I'm just incredibly uncomfortable. I have 36 eggs in my fridge from my neighbor's chickens right now, and we eat 6 eggs a day, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do want to echo. I really think the information should be going to our neighbors. Because there's some really easy things they can do to lower the contamination, but I know that I'm now ingesting that, so I just feel very uncomfortable not providing information.
The ITIR will say also the screening levels, the calculated screening levels that you've used in the study, or is that not to be done?
As of right now.
To be determined as of right now, it isn't. Yes.
It is in there, yes. So we will even where those.
Yes. Also want to know that the data does show that there's another source. It's
Yeah.
not a-
I don't,
not a
I mean,
primary source.
right, so I don't want to get into we can keep the horse enough, but it's the very low sample size and stuff is not enough to get super excited about. And you have, and also the fact that, to reiterate, screening levels don't mean that there's danger. It means that there's something that should be looked at more sampling, which I hope will be part of the investigation.
Thank you. Can you provide some clarity as to how did community members get this data? Like, was it a letter, and then should people have extra questions, was there a phone number they could call?
Yes.
Or so is,
As Peter mentioned, in all of our letters, our data transmittal letters, they have, they have the phrase that, here's his number, contact him and he can get you in. I don't remember the exact words, but it's in the letter, and all of anybody who we collect land from, whether it's public or private, they get this letter as soon as we get the results.
but I'm like specifically to the chicken egg data. If you provided it sounds like you provided the levels, but with no real context because you didn't include the screening levels. So how are those letters framed? Like, here's your levels, period, and then if you have questions, call Peter, or who are, I think, can you describe to us how you informed the chicken egg people, like, of their data and what they could do if they had additional questions? Like, Huddy is raising right now that her neighbors have chickens, and like, maybe they were part of this study and maybe they got the letter, and if there's additional questions, who should they reach out to ask for more information? Like, how are these people informed, and who is the contact if they have additional questions that come up after tonight?
Well, and I sign every letter, and so they always can contact me, but then yes, of course, Peter's name and number is on there for additional questions.
Okay.
Yeah, just a follow-up question. Will the human health risk assessment do something like the P's blood sample testing did and send out a letter to people in the area? Because, like, how did you pick your 7 chickens?
How did we pick them? Well, a couple of different ways. We had done a community survey initially to try to figure out, who had private wells and who else in the area had what. So we had some information on who had chickens. And then we also did a windshield survey. We drove around, we listened, we tried to find chickens. And we talked to people, and we said, hey, you know this person and they have chickens. Okay, well, we'll go talk to them. So, those were kind of the 3 avenues that we took.
Kind of unscientific.
Well, do you have a better way?
I mean, yeah, like a letter, a broadcast letter, because I have chickens and I eat 3 eggs a day and nobody contacted me. Okay.
I mean, again, like, we were focused very much
to do that.
on
If they
one
have
area.
their pets, they're okay.
That's what I said.
So we were very focused on this area.
I know. Initial, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess I'm trying to
It's a small.
picture if the next step is, all right, so you got some. So how do you make it, your selection criteria more scientific and representative? Because that's really what he's getting at and what Sam's getting at.
Well, yeah, I mean, future chicken sampling is under discussion at the moment, so.
We have some also good input on a few of the key relevant pieces here. Thank you. I think what I'd like to do is check with the members of the public in attendance. Dante, have you heard from anybody who would like to give public comment? And can you check your email? Just because I'm not able to do that. And if you're in the attendees list on the virtual meeting and you're interested in making public comment, I think you should be able to just raise your virtual hand to indicate that. If you haven't emailed us, me, nothing. Dante, no? Nope.
Chicken owners are not tuning in.
All right, thank you, that helps me just know about time a little bit. How about if we set aside the eggs, now go to the Portsmouth drinking water update, and then we can come back to any other topics you all.
What about the break?
Yeah, about a 5-minute
We'll do a break, that's what we'll do. It is.
I would have put my hand up early.
Sorry, let's take 10 minutes, we'll come back at 7:22 on that clock.
You gotta get back to your new job.
10-minute break, everyone. We'll be back.
I was really
at
tempted to give some chicken jokes. but-
Operating budget.
Okay.
Works for what?
We are going to. Thank you. We're gonna hear next, from Brian Getz on our drinking water update. Brian, let me get those. One second, you can start. As I do that.
Am I gonna see it from here?
You're gonna see it there, yes, you will.
So yeah, I'm standing here, there's no room at the table, so
Oh.
I'm gonna stand here so I can see my presentation, so I don't have to keep turning around the whole time.
There.
Al, who would be here, he's helping his mother out this evening, who had some medical procedure today, and, but we do have Tim Green and Mike Taganelli in the back of the room. They're responsible for a lot of what you're gonna see here data-wise, because they're the actual operators of the system that have been doing all the hard work of keeping our treatment system updated. So, next slide. For those that aren't really familiar, some of the new people, for what our treatment system is, at the Grafton Drive facility. If you came in Grafton Way, you see our water treatment facility on the right with the sign. There are cartridge filters which would take out any particles that might be just in the groundwater when you pump. We go through 2 resin filters and then granular activated carbon and out in the system. Next slide. Here's a layout, a 3D view of what's inside that building. So you have 6 sets of resin filters and duplicate and 3 carbon filters. And here's what it looks like inside. I know we've had some tours, some people have been inside here. But again, in blue on the right, those are the resin filters, and behind them in silver, the stainless steel are the carbon filters. And here was the before and after, so a 2-year project to actually build this. It was a year of design prior, and it was a number of years of assessing, and we had carbon filters prior that were treating the Harrison and Smith wells. So here's a snapshot of what we have to do, and Tim and Mike every day supplying the water. So what you're seeing is a histogram of monthly water pumpage and what has gone through the P system, the water demand in the almost 10 years now we've been dealing with this, the PFAS issue. So as you can see, there's a bell curve. There's quite a bit of irrigation in the summer. There's also cooling. So the water demands go up in the summer because of the irrigation demands and the cooling. And you can see the wet summer. So here's data, right off hot off the press. So you can see we didn't have the really peak demands because it was a wet summer. We didn't have to deal with the drought either, so that was nice. A good break for us in that sense. So one thing we have been doing, and credit to the Air Force and the whole team here for years, we know what is coming to us. So basically, this is a histogram of all the sample points of PFAS in the supply wells coming at us. And so you can see the Smith, Harrison, and Haven well. All 3 are manifolded into the P's treatment system. So these are the values of what we're tracking there. Next slide. Here's trending in the Smith well. So one thing we did anticipate way early on in this was, as you can see, there was weekly sampling initially, then it went to monthly. The trends did pick up in both the Smith and the Harrison well as far as the PFAS concentrations that were coming to those wells. We expected that because the Haven well was shut off. There was no interim mitigation well system yet. So that trend, went up as we expected. Unfortunately, we had filters online ahead of, regulations dropping and also ahead of the concentrations coming up. And of course, we have full treatment, now as well. Next slide. So here's the Harrison well, and what's interesting to see about this is you can see the curve, it sort of peaks out, and it starts going down. We believe, of course, this is where it gets real complicated, and the hydrogeologists in the room and others we'll continue to make assessments of this, but it's essentially the Haven well had been come back online, but you also have the Air Force's treatment system, so they've been pumping, treating. I know there hasn't been discussion of that third system, which is treating the groundwater adjacent to the Haven well, and then treating it, pumping it back in. So that's a function of this. Next slide. Here's Haven well trend, so you can see the same thing. They peaked up. There was a period of time, as you can see, in the Haven well when it was reactivated, where it was pretty steady state, and then peaked up. Well, that was a period of time where the Ames system actually was down for maintenance, and I know there's been some discussion of, you know, the treatment adjustments that they had to make there, but it's back online, and those what's coming to us is less, certainly much less than it was when it was first sampled, and our system is designed for those peaks, so treatment wise we're still performing very well. Next slide. So here's where data gets very interesting. We presented this at a Waterworks meeting, so Tim tracks this. So what we do is we have 6 resin filters, and there's ways to look at it. You can look at bed volumes. That's the volume of a drop of water as it goes through a bed and how many of those go through. But for me, it's a lot easier to talk in gallons. As you can see, the first, every other filter set has a lot more water that's been put through it. And this was purposely because we didn't know exactly how it's going to perform at first. And we said, look, let's vary the filters, because then they aren't all going to go out at the same time. We're also going to be able to track, you know, the performance of them that way. So Tim, credit to him and Mike for the operating scheme, and they've done a real good job of managing that. And it provides us a little flexibility and to see what's happening overall with system performance. Next slide. So here's what the performance looks like. And this is the raw water, and you can see where the Haven well first started up. So that's why the concentrations really pick up. There was a couple periods of time where it was down for maintenance and blending reasons. So that's where it dipped back down. But overall, that's the variant of, you see the Haven well and the whole combined PFAS is again the most concentrated constituent we have because of the firefighting foam. And here's what treatment looks like, the graph for what comes out of that first bed of resin, non-detect. So that whole period of time through treatment, we have non-detect through the filters, which is good news. And this is just the first filter, one of the many. So next slide, please. We do track all compounds to the 23. So we do see PFBA start to break through. Again, this is only through the first filter. What actually comes out after you get through the second filter and through the carbon is much less. Though PFBA does start breaking through, and that's a known thing that happens everywhere, that was expected. What it does is it helps us trend what's going on in the system, so we know, when we might need to do some filter media change outs. Currently, there is no reg on PFBA. Minnesota has set an advisory. Currently, they did in 2022, got it right here, of 7,000 parts per trillion. Next slide. So again, it's more short chain. This is the bed life. So this is where the engineers really love to dive into this data. Next slide, please. So the other thing, and so people say, well, just put filters on, you're good. Well, you are when it comes to the PFAS, you're treating the PFAS. Well, you're treating everything else. The water's going through the filter, so there's other stuff in there. That's why we did some pilots. So there's manganese in the Haven well, and manganese is not super high. I mean, when we talk to other water systems, they're like, well, it's 0.13. That's not exceedingly high, not unexpected for New England. Well, what happens is with the volume of water you're pumping through these resins, and the resins themselves are really good at filtering, they filter out the manganese too. So what the manganese does is it builds up on the filters, and your pressure in the system. So this is strictly pressure. I mean, it's best way to say it is you have an air filter, and you know what happens when you have an air filter and it starts getting dirty, less and less air is coming out. It's the same way, pressure in your filters. So this is just an operational issue. It's something that Tim recognized, he and Mike worked on. We've been able to make some adjustments. Again, that's how you can swap some filters and stuff, but it also led us to where we needed to talk to the Air Force about changing out some media. Next slide. Same thing, showing the pressure. So this is what the pressure built up. We did some backwashes, and then we changed some media out, but you can see the pressures come up, and when they get near that 30, so there's operating parameters that when you operate this system, you can't exceed 30 pounds of pressure. You're going to start impacting the media. So we track that, and again, thanks to Tim and Al and Mike, they've been really on top of it. But these are things that you only by doing and running a system do you realize, these other aspects of operating. Next slide. And here was some of the manganese concentrations. So you can see the blue line, this is what comes in from Haven. So Harrison and Smith, they have much lower manganese. So again, when we were running those, we were running the resin system. Really didn't see that impact until the Haven came online. Next slide. The good news about the manganese is it is taken out. So this is the what comes out of the overall system when you get it. So next slide, please. And again, here we go. Post cartridge. Next slide. So I think those that went on the tour, they saw this unit, and there's Tim. What we've continued to do is track different types of resins. So they all seem to perform very well with the PFAS, but again, we have these other issues of, differential pressure, operations, cost, availability. So we actually went to a different resin. Next slide. So what we switched to when we did a change out earlier this year is we took three out of the 6 trains of filters this year in April, and we switched from the IX resin to the Calgon instead of Sorbix. So again, that was one that was piloted, looked to be performing really well comparatively. Cost was not really much difference on differential, and Calgon was really good to work with. So, and you can see what they look like. They don't look a whole lot different, but the performance on the Calgon showed that these pressure issues were something that they handled better than the Sorbix. Next slide. So as everybody sees here, data-wise, we continue working on assessing the system, the performance, what's coming at us, how the treatment and how the monitoring in the AIM system is doing. Next slide, please. And continue with our outreach. So again, we do our water quality report. You can get these online. So this was the report from 2022. And again, there's a single page dedicated to the PFAS compounds, telling everybody what on the treatment side is coming out. And next slide. And lastly, we are anticipating some regulations coming down the pipe here from the EPA They proposed, 4 parts per trillion for PFOA and PFAS, and we'll see whether that gets promulgated. If that's the case, you know, we know the system performs here, such that, you know, we'll be able to meet that regulatory requirement, but, we do know, there are many, many systems in the country that are gonna get impacted at that floor, so. Yes, that's it for now, and thanks to Al and Tim for putting this together, and I did the quick learn, to make sure did I misspeak, Tim? Got it, excellent. I quoted you enough that I can, oh, well, Tim told me to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions or comments? Yes.
Sure.
So I'm trying to understand, you went from the ion exchange resin sorbents to Calgon.
Correct.
And was the reason you went to the Calgon because of the manganese issue? Or the PFAS issue?
Manganese. All
So-
4 of them do very good with the PFAS.
So
PFAS.
is Calgon more expensive?
No, it was very similar. All these, they're all priced about the same right now.
But the whole idea of using the resin is to get rid of the PFAS. So isn't that an expensive way to get rid of manganese?
Oh, yeah.
Should, okay.
Yeah, well,
I mean, is there a better way of getting rid of the manganese without
Well-
spending all that money on?
yeah, well, and we've looked at that. So we'll be looking at, is there some treatment ahead of the treatment you can do? But it's called green sand filtering.
Yeah.
But then you got another set of filters. And you then end up, what green sand filters do is you backwash them, and you're doing that quite often. Well, the PFAS is still gonna be in there. The thing about handling, and if we ever do, maintenance of the resin and the carbon filters, it's in the resin and carbon. If the manganese or the green sand doesn't take out PFAS yet. So what we're looking at is just managing the system. Again, there's a lot of volume that went through this, so it wasn't like immediate, that we had to do this, and, we really did it to, this is a learning process for all of us, so, we want to also be ahead of, if we had a big high summer demand this year and we didn't change out, we could have got to the point to where, we would have to take a filter offline, and then we'd be down to 5 sets. And then if we had to take another set off, we didn't want to run into that either.
Is there a sequestering agent like orthophosphate that you could utilize prior?
We're looking at that.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
Brian, do you know geographically within Portsmouth where the water from the 3 different wells go, or is it all homogenized?
All the wells pump into the Pease treatment system, so what goes out for the entire Pease service area is through the treatment. So everybody, right here, I filled this up, this is Pease water, came here. So anybody on Pease is getting water from the Pease water treatment facility, and Newington Village is getting the water from the Pease system.
So these 3 wells do not feed geographically Portsmouth?
No.
Thank you.
I'm just curious about the lifespan of the single-use resin.
Lifespan, we could have gone longer, so we're gonna find out, I guess.
2 years or?
Well, it's a volume, so that resin was in for 2 years, yeah, we'd been running it for 2 years and changing it out. It likely, maybe could have gone a little longer, but again, it'd be a lot different if we didn't have drinking water on this side, if we were just a treatment system that, you could run it that far because you don't have a risk of, people drinking it if it starts exceeding the regulatory requirements. So basically, we're trying to stay ahead of that too.
Yeah, thanks. I have a question about the frequency in which you're changing the filters. You know, I know we talked about the PFBA is breaking through, but there's no regulation on that. And so in combination with the PFBA breaking through and the manganese issue, what is this, is there a schedule, or are you guys kind of piloting when you need to change it out? Like, what will trigger a change out for you?
Well, the pressure, the time of year, we're set and we have a budget that, you know, we've agreed to with the Air Force. We'll be changing 3 more filters this winter or spring, and another, we also changed the carbon out. So we have 3 carbon filters. So we changed one of the carbons out as well. So we'll change the second one. So we'll keep rotating those, and we'll keep, you know, analyzing and tracking and, you know, seeing what the performance is like. We sample, you know, quite often, you know, on the filters as well. So that's useful.
Okay. Let's got one more question, Ryan. Is there a trend with precipitation versus drought and the PFAS level that you found? Like, for example, last year was a drought where the PFAS level is higher versus this year with all the rain that you found in monitoring wells.
You know, the wet period has only been for, you know, the last 6 to 8 months. So the trend would have to be, you know, longer than that. So no, we haven't seen a dramatic change from that. Not yet.
Brian, do you have any concerns about the availability of carbon in the future if all these other?
We sure do. We're thinking about pre-ordering stuff. There is not enough carbon in the country to treat all the water that.
Carbon
might be
and resin.
Pardon?
Carbon and resin, yeah.
Yeah, resin, yeah. We presented last week, and the happiest person in the room was the Calgon representative. You just get to sit back and here it comes. And I literally asked him, I go, well, how you guys, he goes, oh, we're ramping up. We're getting a second facility online. But you know, that's a lot of stuff. Carbon, there are some quality control issues with carbon. So you can't just buy it. Don't go to Home Depot and think your carbon filter is really doing what it's gonna do, because we have to do lots of cut. Calgon is great because their quality control is excellent. But you know, as people scale up, it's gonna be tougher and tougher. They're gonna, like the rest of us, they're gonna need more staff, they're gonna need more facilities, they're gonna have to, more of everything. Yeah.
So I have one more question. Is the waste, the PFAS that's accumulated at this plant also part of what gets shipped to Michigan? Or is the city of Portsmouth, do they have to,
They take care of it, but they follow up.
At least we follow the.
so it's gonna go to the same place?
Correct. And when, you know, their guidance change, before we change stuff out, we touch base with the Air Force and make sure we're following what their guidance is.
Have you explored GAC Renew at all? Is that something you can't do with the drinking water?
Renew it?
GAC Renew? GAC Renew, or?
Like, is that just a product or?
Yeah, it's like a treatment system for GAC to.
Oh, yeah, where it's reconstituted.
Yeah.
And stuff. Not on site, no.
Okay.
Sorry. I just have one more question. It wasn't part of your presentation, but I know it's important. When you talk about the regulations that are coming down the pike soon, we have 2 city of Portsmouth wells that are in the southern well field, the Portsmouth and the Collins well. I don't know if you could just say a little bit about what's being done in preparation for that. I know that's separate than fees, but not really. And how is the Air Force cooperating with your plans on that?
We're still in discussions with them.
Okay.
We're all tracking that. We've got our engineers done some preliminary assessment. The fortunate thing, I won't say fortunate, the concentrations aren't so high that, we would probably just go with carbon there. It wouldn't be near as complex a system as we have here at Pease. When we just put filters on the Harrison and Smith wells, that was really straightforward and easy, operationally pretty easy. They treated the water great, so carbon is a real good filter media, but again, just as mentioned, we're gonna need a lot of it.
Kim, did you have her?
And now he's answered, thank you.
We are in our last 10 minutes and I want to give everybody a chance on the round to say any closing thoughts. But for that, is there any conversation anyone has to have while we are together? So we'll go around and you can share kind of anything final on your mind for the evening.
I'm gonna have him come.
Want me to go next? Let's wait, we'll do our co-chairs at that. Michael?
I appreciate the opportunity we've had tonight to have such an open discussion. I think it's very positive. Look forward to tomorrow night when Chris is going to be in meeting with the Newington selectmen about additional wells on town property. And it won't come from me, but it would surprise me if chickens come up.
So, thank you.
Good to go. All set? All set?
All set.
I have a pressing question to ask Mike.
Oh, me?
EPA,
Oh, okay.
what, anything that, any insider information?
I don't,
about
I
this
wish,
effort?
yeah, no, I guess everybody, again, the promulgation and sales, I don't know where that is, I'm sure they've solicited, I'm sure they've gotten many comments. But I don't have any new to report, so I wish I could, but I don't. And I want to thank Ona, I think, you've done a great job on over the years, and I appreciate everything you've done. You made this thing really, I think we struggled out the gate, but I think we have a great forum, and I think it's largely to you, so thank you.
Echo that.
Collaborative effort. You all know.
No, we don't.
I just want to say I really appreciate the egg discussion and having that. That was some hard information to receive. I'm also looking forward to future discussions about other biota sampling and future biota sampling. I think that's going to be very important for RAD members and particularly myself, Bud and Mark and others. So anyway, but thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Well, I'm still unclear as to if anyone's gonna have a conversation with folks, or about the information that was shared. I understand everyone's perspective, but I feel a little uncomfortable because we're leaving it that there's no task ahead for someone to follow up on that.
I don't know anything.
Thank you, Kim. You reminded me I did this in the backwards order and I should go through all my next steps and then we're gonna follow the co-chairs. So bear with me for one moment. Here are some of the things we heard that should be happening next. We will make sure all the slides are posted, the recording of the meeting is posted, the May meeting summary is posted. The RAD is really interested in coming up with a system with the Air Force to be notified when key documents are released and information or training on how to access those documents because it is not obvious. So hopefully there can be some response to that, maybe in the letter response. Everyone wants the IPIR report as soon as it's ready and available to share, and that's happening. And we know the Air Force is developing a response to the letter from RAD members in coordination with the other regulators. We have this invitation or offer to have RAD members write a letter supporting information requests. So the Air Force will be moving on, so there probably will be some conversation around that. There is an open request to figure out how to do more sharing of the egg data and screening levels. Maybe there were several creative options for ways to do that. So we need to pick that up. It's not a clear to do for any one person, but I think everybody here hears it. So if you want to help with that or participate, you can let me know. You can let Andrea or Chris know. We can help connect dots if there are people who want to work on that. And then I think there was a request to Amy to please share what you learned about PFAS levels in eggs that are not raised in areas like this one, so that the group has that information or those resources. So that's what I got for next steps. There are probably more in the letter that's getting responded to. Want to invite Andrea and then Chris to share final thoughts.
Sure. Thank you very much for summarizing that. And yeah, I think I have a lot of thank yous actually. So I want to say thank you to SKIO and their team for helping us. They've been super supportive and helpful, and we look forward to continue working with them. Thank you to the Air Force, DES, and EPA for committing to responding to our letter. We look forward to that. Thank you for the updates on Site 8 and the work to optimize the work, the work that's going on there, and, with a focus that we need to try to optimize that as much as we can. That's an area of concern for our community. I agree, we need to have a plan with the eggs. I think there needs to be additional outreach, and we do need to share those screening levels with the community members. So I hope we can have follow-up discussions and plans on that. We do look forward to the ITIR and how we with SKIO and the community can work together to have some meetings and some dialogue about that report and better understand the Air Force's approach to all that data and how they collected it and why they collected it, so we can really wrap our heads around that and give meaningful comments. Thank you to Brian for giving a presentation and an update on what's going on over at the Grafton Road plant. And then lastly, I'll just say thank you very much to Ona. We're really gonna miss you. I agree with what Mike Daly said. I think, we've had a lot of change in this RAB. We've had a lot of people come and go, but you've been a solid fixture since 2016. And so you've helped kind of ground us and keep us together, even when we've had difficult conversations. So it's very, very sad to see you go. It's going to be a big loss to our RAB, and we wish you the best in all that you've done. Thank you for everything you've done for us.
Chris.
I'm sure most of you know I put my coat on. It's not because I'm eager to leave or anything. It's just cold here for me.
Come back in February.
But today I'm really happy I was able to share the updated DoD policy on data sharing. I think that clears up a lot of issues with us, and I think it takes some strain off of our relationships. And so I'm really glad that that came out and I was able to share that with you today. And again, I just want to thank you all for participating, especially y'all in person. It means a lot. It's much better dialogue. And and again, I'm going to say goodbye again. Thank you again so much. I'm going to be lost without you. I wish you best in all your new doings.
And I get to, because I am controlling this, say the final, which is to say thanks to all of you. And that
You can come back anytime.
so excited for the cleanup to go so well in the coming years. And for you all to keep doing the excellent work you're doing. It's been such a pleasure, like individually, to work with each of you and collectively. And I really admire it, and I am happy that you get to work with my colleagues. So have a lovely evening, everyone. Take cake, take cookies, and be well. Thank you, everyone online. We appreciate you also. Yeah.
Oh, it's looking good right now.